situation where, like idiots, they also had somebody working at the P4 lab, which is less than a mile, like I'd say half a mile away from the wet market where it was made. So someone's selling, meat out the back door. The virus itself has been mutating on its own for about 9 months while they were testing iterations on the population of Wuhan. Along with the fact that, so here you have a situation where their weaponized version of it goes bad. They had already tested different iterations on the population in their own country and a few other places. And then on top of that, the final variant was eventually put out into the food supply through someone trying to make money off of selling dead test subject animals who probably didn't have a clue what was really going on. All they knew there was a storage locker full of dead animals. And then from there, from what I'm hearing is that some people said that they actually just got to the point too where they just were like, all right, use it so we can say it was a broader situation, because this is how insane saving face is in Asia, where they actually thought that releasing the virus in Wuhan would give them a better chance of kind of like saying, oh no, it was a much larger attack, rather than take the fault of that. And then the weird part is that they're trying to back out of that, but they've already done crazy things like saying, oh, it's illegal to eat wild trafficked meat. Really? Okay. But so you have to understand, you're dealing with sociopaths who have a culture built around gas you every step. And when you go to China, that's what you get. But you have to, you have to. Let me give you an example. There was a man who was arguing with Never mind. It's the guy argued with a travel agent over whether or not Korea was safer than China, and how he watched the news in China, and they said that the outbreak everywhere else is more dangerous. So he was arguing with them to give him a plane ticket to fly back to China because he thought he was unsafe in Korea, South Korea, as a matter of fact. And it was just that weird moment where just, you can't tell a crazy person to not harm themselves when they're that gaslit and brainwashed. But I digress. I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
Well, we touched a little bit about in the last podcast about how people are responding kind of, it's exacerbating some mental health issues. People are panicking, and people shouldn't panic. Try to stay calm.
Well, they should panic. They should panic, and I'll tell you like this. The last thing you want as this thing starts to really get underway is the same socially acceptable, psychotic, twisted, people functioning in a calculated, rational manner during what's coming next. And the reason why is because they will be more dangerous.
Well, here's the thing. We have these people politicizing it, and then we have these people online that are automatically posting, well, that's false, that's a lie, that's false, that's a lie. And they're in total, it's almost like cognitive dissonance. Do you know what that is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, it's like let me give cognitive dissidence. Okay. People are upset about the economic ramifications, but it's a state of having inconsistent thoughts and beliefs or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and change or traumatic change, right? So, so there's this online campaign where they're trying to politicize it. Never let a crisis go to waste, mentality, right? And nobody's really looking at or talking about how this, how it's behaving. And you've already experienced it. You were in China. Let's just put that out there. You were in China. You've been in Vietnam for several months, and you're now dealing with it in Vietnam. And I was actually on Google this morning. We were looking up, the population of Wuhan, which is the numbers were from 2018 that are posted currently on Google, and that's 11.08 population. And we know that's not accurate, obviously.
No, the population of Wuhan is 15 million, but Google is saying that it's 0.8 million. And here's something to take into consideration right now. Okay, so first of all, you've got the dark web, and then you've got the deep web. On the deep web, not the dark web, deep web's a little bit harder to get to than the dark web for reasons I won't go into. But on the deep web, they're exchanging information to the extent where they're basically coming out and saying, "Hey, listen, coming out of Taiwan, right? Because you can't get a single signal in or out of Wuhan anymore, and it wouldn't matter anyway, because as I understand it right now, what's coming out of the deep web in Taiwan, with a few other subtle verifications that I won't go into, but they're basically saying that 85% of the population of Wuhan is gone, and the population, even though they're telling you it's 11.8 or 11.08%, right? Million. I'm sorry, not 11%, but I'm sorry, 11.08 million or 11.8 million. The actual number is 15 million, and they're missing 85% of their population. So that means that there's only about 2,250,000 people left, possibly, if they haven't starved to death already. So. And that's Wuhan. We don't know what else, because we're all looking at Wuhan. They've had plenty. This is one thing I'll give the CCP credit for. When they have issues with one area of their government or their infrastructure, any negative things that come out of them learning how to alter and fix a problem, they immediately have the ability, from what I can tell and what I've seen in the past, and even now, where they can fix the entire problem. They're so centralized. They've mastered the art of fixing the entire problem. Spread load. This goes back into that whole gaslighting thing, where they figure out how to gaslight one portion of the population and immediately are capable of extending that to the rest of the population, almost in a globalized sense. However, in this situation, though, they're running out of... They're fast approaching a reality where they're not going to be able to maintain stability, because ultimately people are starting to see something that they haven't seen before. And this is what I'm saying. No matter what lies people are being told right now, from either at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party or at the behest of what other governments are banking on it. Because you have to remember, partially, even if Trump wasn't your president, even if you liked the Chinese Communist Party, so many of the corporations, and I've said this before, and other businesses are so tied into the Chinese economy on a global level that they can't afford to have you really understand what's going on. So they're banking on making sure that they pay the money situation is so tight. Don't you think it's weird that you haven't seen any really famous?
It's a situation where the corporations are relying on the mainstream media to try and curb the economic repercussions of what's happening, and that would include China.
Yeah, but then you have the political class who are in a life or death struggle here, so they can't say China's bad. Only thing I can focus on is say, remember Orange Man bad. So that's all they have at that level, is to try to, get everybody. Now that more spirit cooking. The problem with this effort, though, to do all this, crazy spirit cooking this time, because remember, same time again, Orange Man bad. Remember Orange Man bad. Here's the reality, though. You're only going to be able to sell that narrative up to the point where he's done so much decentralizing, yet still allowing the federal government to have a choke chain. that as they run wild and start playing little games of like, oh, we're only going to give tests or take care of these people or do this or do that, people are going to, because see, so now we're at a point where Trump has kind of left the field open for people to interpret how they have to manage the crisis themselves. But remember, they're stealing the money. So they're like, where's the federal dollars? Because they don't want to spend their own money because they're going to try to steal it at a certain point. So because they're going to try to launder it and steal it and do all these other things, they're like, oh, federal government, we need this money. Oh, CDC, we need this money. Now the local governments in your cities could have easily paid any number of labs to do the testing for them, although it takes like 2 to 4 days. They are still going, I'll come back to that thing in a moment. So they're still in a process of trying to get you to feel a certain way about him, while simultaneously they're coming from a place where they're going to basically screw over the people that they have a federal duty by penalty of jail to protect and safeguard. So they're all just kind of sitting on their hands on purpose, and they're waiting on all these other people to politicize it. And, you know, I will say this, the useless idiots have learned a lot from our methods during the last election cycle, but the problem is this. You're not going to be able to sell Orange Man bad in a reality as it begins to come out that the local governments have the power over getting the test to get you tested, getting the necessary things needed, and organizing the state around the individual states, right, around protecting their population. So it will come out very quickly, almost as soon as the narrative starts to really pop up. And, you know, I'll say this. The Trump administration has already triaged about 10 million Americans. Already triaged them. But what people don't realize is, you might say, well, why would they triage Americans? Don't they care about Americans? Because they already know there are a group of people within the country. I'm sorry, there's a percentage of the national populace within America who are, let me just say this, we've already been subjected to mind-altering viruses. We've already been.
Another point I want to make. People are saying that this has to do with 5G, but people are ignoring the fact that they've been spraying us with chemtrails and as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, as well as the spirit cooking and the vaccines. So depending on how much heavy metals you have in your system, it's not only going to exacerbate the Wuhan virus, it's going to exacerbate a lot of conditions, the 5G. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I would say that, but see, here's the funny thing about the 5G thing, because there's a lot of people trying to come out and say, oh, it doesn't have anything to do with that. And there's people I really respect who are going on record and saying that, but I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, like, I understand why they are thinking that, but I also understand that they're missing a couple of components of the nature of what's driving what's really driving our cognitive functions. And what I don't think a lot of people discuss is the fact that if you are, okay, so I would say almost 2/3 of, I'd say almost maybe 40% of the population within America, and God knows what other population, what other percentage in other places where things are unhealthy or really spirit cooked even to this day. What they're not understanding is that they're missing about 30% of the population is missing 1/3 of its gut flora. Your gut flora really help you manage your immune system, not just your immune system, your higher brain functions. But in relation to your higher brain functions and your immune system, they're so interconnected that they even, this is going to sound weird, I don't care if you don't like it, but I'm going to tell you this, your gut flora is actually what runs your cognitive functions, meaning that your actual brain is primarily the microbes in your stomach. And your brain is just a wet computer that helps you drive the body. It's almost